Hello, this is Dr. Greg Mays with Your Word Wednesday. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to do a series, and the title of the series is God of the Ripple Effect. Now, if you listened or watched last week's episode, you know that these episodes are being recorded from the Royal Caribbean ship, the Allure of the Seas. And I was sitting having breakfast with my wife and my business partner, Jessica Maldonado, and her fiance, Jordan. And we were looking out, and I made a statement about ripple effects. And then God began pouring into me just different stories from the Bible, even from life, ripple effects. What do I mean by that? If you throw a stone in the water, it hits and it starts to ripple out, and it just continues. And even though it may have been a small stone, it begins to ripple. The effects go far. And so I want to teach over the next few weeks about people in the Bible where we see something that seems small and insignificant. God takes it and does a mighty work through it. First up, Esther. Now you might think that I'm going to talk and focus on Esther. Actually, I'm going to talk about Esther's cousin, Mordecai.
In Matthew's book, Jesus said, go into all the land. Take the word, share it, teach it, preach to every man. Just do his will, because he always has a master plan. It's not your place to make the world believe or understand.
Mordecai is the big, I believe, ripple effect that happens. So what is the stone that gets thrown into the water? The stone that gets thrown into the water is Queen Vashti. As Esther opens up, the Bible is telling us about a big party that King Xerxes is throwing for all of the men. It says the military leaders of Persia and Media, the princes and the nobles of the provinces were present. It says for a full 180 days, he displayed his vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. That is bigger than a Super Bowl party, right? He is throwing a big party, and then he decides, everybody's been partying for all this amount of time. He decides that he wants to show off the beauty of Queen Vashti. And she says, no, I'm not coming. And in order to make sure that other women don't begin to act like that, King Xerxes' people there, his advisors, say, you got to put her out. You have to get rid of her. It says here, this very day, the Persian and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. They said, there will be no end of disrespect and discord. So this is the ripple effect. Queen Vashti chooses not to go to the king. She doesn't want to dishonor herself. And that event is the stone that hits the water. Now, what is the ripple effect? We need a new queen. So as it's rippling out, enter Esther. Now, Esther is a Jewish woman. And we meet Esther. It says, when the king's order and edict had been proclaimed, many young women were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Hegai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace. And I did kind of jump ahead. Esther is Mordecai's cousin. It says Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah. Her name gets changed, becomes Esther, also known, not changed, but she was also known as Esther. Said she had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. And so when the king's order comes out, now Esther is now one of the ladies who is in the running for the queen. So let me skip ahead and let you know Esther becomes the queen. When Esther becomes the queen, Mordecai, who sits at the gate, realizes there is a conspiracy to kill the king. He tells Esther, and Esther tells the king and gives credit to Mordecai. Ripple effect. Now Mordecai has saved the king's life. This is written down in a book, and then we continue on with the story. Enter the man Haman. Haman becomes the king's right-hand man. And people are bowing down to Haman, but Mordecai refuses. And even though God, by the name God, is not mentioned at all in Esther, we know that the Jews and Mordecai specifically is not bowing down because he reveres God, not man. And so Haman is so upset, he builds this gallows that he's going to kill Mordecai on. And he's feeling really good about this when one day the king, he can't sleep. He's struggling to sleep. And so he calls in his attendant and asks for the book to be read to him. And this is like the history book. Everything that happens, they write it down. Well, remember Mordecai saved the king's life? Well, that was written down. And so it was read in the king's hearing. And the king says, wait a minute. Who was that person that did that? And the attendant said, Mordecai. He said, what did we do for him? And the attendant said, nothing. Well, about that time, the king hears Haman out in the outer area. And he says, hey, come in here. Haman comes in the room, and God says, Mordecai, King Xerxes, I'm going to get the name right. King Xerxes says, what should be done for a person that the king, let me go find that because I want to read it exactly how it should be. Because he is asking for Haman's advice on what should be done, and the way that he words it is important. So give me a quick second. Don't worry about that lick. Give me a quick second to find. I did skip one thing. Haman goes to the king and asks the king to allow his kingdom to get rid of all the Jews. And so the king stamps an edict. Ripple effect, right? Watch this. The king, I want to find that. Here it is. It says the king couldn't sleep. And then his attendant said Haman was out there. He said, bring him in. Haman entered. The king says, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? And Haman assumes the king is talking about himself. So he gives all these things. Well, you need to do this, and really just things on, because Haman thinks that the king is talking about Haman. And then the king says, we'll go do all those things for Mordecai. And now Haman has to go do all the ripple effect. The ripple effect of Mordecai, of Vashti making her decision. Now Haman, who hates Mordecai, he will prepare a table in the presence of your enemies. Now here is Mordecai being honored by the king. And who has to honor him? Haman. The Haman who hates Mordecai, right? So now we move forward. We have this edict that's out there. Mordecai tells Esther, you got to go tell the king. Esther is very scared. They fast, and then she goes and asks the king, well, can I make dinner for you, have a dinner for you and Haman? Well, the king says, of course, and invites Haman. Haman's so excited. He thinks, I got this. In the meantime, Haman is building this gallows. Ripple effect. Look at all that's happening. Haman thinks he's going to be this great guy. And the whole time, I'm skipping to the end, the whole time God is setting up Mordecai to be honored while the Jews are saved. Ripple effect. Let me skip all the way to the end. Eventually, the very gallows I told you about earlier that were for Mordecai, Haman, because of his actions, is actually killed on them. And Mordecai ultimately gets raised to a very high level in King Xerxes' court. And the Jews are spared. Ripple effect. What was the pebble that hit the water? Queen Vashti chose not to honor the king's request. Pebble. And the ripple, because of that decision, Esther comes to become the queen. Remember, Esther is the cousin/daughter of Mordecai. And now Mordecai eventually is risen to this high level. And there he was, hated by the king's right-hand man. Hated by the king's right-hand man. And what is the result? Because he was patient and he honored God. Ultimately, God honored him and saved the Jewish people. Ripple effect. You don't know what God is doing. All you should be reminded of is that you are a part of the ripple effect. Now, I hope you come back next week. We have another story in showing us that he is the God of the ripple effect. I pray that this is the best for you. And remember, stay strong.
So what you waiting for? Someone to feel the pain some more? Cause you ain't share the love, the grace you found within the Father's care. To share the love of God is more than just a simple job. It's Christ speaking the off a Holy Spirit law. Share it.